Good evening, everyone. I think we're just waiting for Ashwin to join, and then we'll be on air. Hi, Ashwin. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Jetri Dialogs. This is our second episode. I'm really excited that alumni relations is going to be the topic of our second episode. This is our monthly conversation on all things education, and today we are reframing alumni relations from nostalgia and a good to have to a strategy, a nice and absolutely a must have, right? I'm Nidhi Reddy, your host for this session. I've been an alumni relations champion for decades, building out ISB's alumni strategy, working deeply with the Hyderabad Public School Begumpet Alumni Association, which counts the who's who of the global business world among its alumni, be it Satya Nadella or Sailesh Jejurkar and so on. Um, I truly believe alumni are an institution's most involved and effective stakeholders and almost its lifeblood. And I'm so excited that this is the topic for today. I believe the volume is a bit low. Arushi, if you can do something about it. Uh, uh, so, engaged alumni really are not a passive extension of a university. I think they are an active force that can power all kinds of things, starting from placements, research, brand, of course, philanthropy, and so on. But it has to be built effectively and it has to be built consciously, right? The evidence is quite compelling. IIT Madras, and Ashwin is here. He's going to talk a little bit more about it. But IIT Madras alumni gave more than 350 crore rupees within a year. IIT Bombay alumni channelized about $10 million from their alumni. ISB, a fledgling school in some ways, recently ran a scholarship initiative, 25 in their year 25. And they were able to raise 2.5 crores within a few months, like 2 or 3 months, right? So this is just fundraising. This all comes from consistent engagement and transparent communication and clear priorities that show alumni how their support matters. And really, their support advances research, advances student engagement, advances opportunities for students, and really builds up the institution. And when all of this aligns, alumni stakeholders and alumni relations can become an engine for growth and not just a tool, but really build out an institution of excellence. So, really, with me today, I have three exceptional advancement leaders. I'm really excited. All three come from different points of views in some sense, and you'll hear them. I have Dr. Ashwin Mahalingam, who is the Dean for Alumni and Corporate Relations at IIT Madras. He heads one of India's most mature alumni engines, if I may say so, where the alumni office formalizes lots of things, including access and awards and partnerships at scale. Ashwin himself is an alum of IIT Madras, of course, Stanford too, but IIT Madras for today's conversation. And he's a highly decorated professor. So thanks, Ashwin, for doing this for us. Really appreciate it. I have with us Dr. Gretchen Dobson. She's a global alumni stakeholder engagement specialist. Gretchen and I go back a really long way. I was just telling the panelists. She's currently Associate Director for Scholarships at Tetra Tech International and is a long-standing, consistent board member and contributor to international alumni relations. She's written multiple books on international alumni relations, including how to engage international alumni as strategic partners. So thanks, Gretchen. Gretchen is joining us from Hanoi. It's really late in the evening for her. So thanks, a special thank you to you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I have with me Paresh Pasade. He's the founder and CEO of WOW, which is an alumni engagement ecosystem tool in some sense. They power 1,200 plus institutions across 28 countries, serving about 5 million alums. And the numbers are just mind-boggling. He also has designed the alumni leadership program, and they've certified roughly 1,500 alumni professionals across multiple batches, and that's helping build capacity across campuses. So thanks, Paresh, for being there and bringing the data and the technical aspect to alumni relations.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you very much.
So just sort of to start off, I just wanted to tell you how we are going to organize the next 55 minutes now. Um, I'm going to request Ashwin, Gretchen, and Paresh to give their opening remarks a minute or two, and then we'll jump into questions that I have sort of planned. We'll open it out to audience questions, and then I'm going to request all our panelists to give us some nuggets of information or insights for us to take away. Okay, so very quickly, just directing this to Ashwin, yours is a case study that a lot of institutions in India would look up to, really. But for you at IIT Madras, what does alumni strategy even mean beyond reunions?
Thank you. Thanks, Nidhi, and thank you also for having me on this webinar. When I speak, of course, I'm the third dean of alumni affairs at IIT Madras. So, in some sense, this is sort of an architecture that we've built up over time. I think we alumni engagement begins actually when people are still students. I think what you want them to do when they are students is develop some kind of an attachment to that alma mater in a soft way. And then I think going forward, you want to sort of see how you can, as you rightly put it, alumni are a fantastic resource who can help with so many aspects of academia, primarily because they have some vested interest in their alma mater. And they've gone on to develop a whole series of skills over and beyond what what they learned when they were on campus. And they can sort of come back and give, in the US, they follow this sort of acronym called the three T's: time, talent, and treasure, and we follow that as well. So I think for us, alumni engagement essentially means not just fundraising, which is, I think, one important part of alumni engagement, but the three T's put together. How can we get alumni to just give a little bit of their time, maybe come and mentor students and things like this? How can we get them to give their talent, which means can they actually teach a class, be on the advisory board of a research center, work with a professor to tweak a grant proposal so that it's more practically relevant, etc. And then, of course, there's this treasure part where I think alumni funding allows the university the flexibility to start investing in all kinds of interesting activities that it may not be able to do otherwise. So alumni engagement for us has always been the three T's in that order. We feel when people give time, they will be incentivized to give talent. When they give time and talent, they will also be incentivized to sort of give treasure to build up endowments and things like this. So alumni engagement, as we call it, friend raising, is I think an extremely important part of alumni engagement, and I think that's sort of a piece that's not necessarily very straightforward or easy, but I think something that's necessary to do, which is how do you get alumni to connect back to the alma mater? And of course, there are different levers for different people. For some of them, it's student life. At IIT Madras, people at the undergraduate level identify with which hostel they went to, and whether they were part of this inter-hostel hockey competition between this hostel and that. And those are ways to draw people in. Many others, for instance, graduate students spend relatively smaller amounts of time in the hostel, but are more affiliated towards their laboratories where they did their research in and things like that. So the hook is different for different people. But to us, that's what this is all about, is how do we get people to get excited about coming back first, about contributing, and then we can sort of figure out based on each person's interest where and how they can contribute.
Thanks, Ashwin. Gretchen, any opening remarks from you?
I think it's a perfect segue. So Dr. Mahalingam has mentioned, kind of what's in it for the alums. And I think let's take a step back and why do institutions and organizations engage alumni. And my passion has been asking the question, kind of a research question over the last 25 years, why do organizations and institutions engage our global alums, our international alums, when I would say a vast majority of our alumni have this kind of transnational background, which means they live and work even in their mind space, their heart space, or their actual professional space in 2 or more countries at all times. They work for a multinational company. They work or they have a family or friends in other locations. They travel frequently. So it's not just about where they're place-based, but where they spend their time and what they do. So stepping back, so that's just talking a little bit about the data, right? Which Paresh will talk a little bit more about how we organize our alumni data. So for the institutions, why do they engage alums around the world? 6 primary reasons, and I'm going to add a 4th T to what Dr. Mahalingam has mentioned. So the first is about branding. Alums and the institutions are extending their brand via their graduates. Their graduates are the brand ambassadors. So to carry that moniker of the name of the IIT Madras, of the ISB, of the independent school in, Woodstock, up in Missouri, up at, above Dehradun. I've been there, I worked with them. So it's about carrying the name, the branding, and that's really important. And that's quite a financial benefit to the institution. The second is the reputational management. In good times or bad, we want our institutions and organizations to be seen as solving the problems, of being action-oriented, as being engaged in the community. So therefore, the 4th T, time, talent, treasure, or technology. I've always said it's the 4th T, how alums use their phones, how alums live their lives online. So that is a primarily free service for the institutions. How do we corral and provide them with those kind of training opportunities for them to not only extend their own brand, but also to manage their own reputation? So it goes 2 ways, right? The third is about recruitment. Obviously, this is like the one reason why I think a lot of leaders on an institutional campus will invest in this area, is because they are arms of recruitment. The recruitment, even during COVID, no one traveled. They were stuck. Yet alums were still within their home domiciles, or they were somewhere else, which was a target, a target recruitment area for an institution. So it is recruitment, and that happens online, virtually, every day. But the extension of the recruitment, or the prospecting, recruitment, the acceptance and engagement and conversion, that whole cycle that happens annually or more than that, is certainly boosted through alums volunteerism. Employability. Employability is the 4th reason, not just about getting a job, but keeping a job and having those skills to carry oneself across the lifetime. So be able to bring alums and to foster their employability, bring them back to contribute to real world examples into the classrooms, important. Finally, for more reasons, we talked about fundraising, but the other sixth reason would be that public diplomacy, that soft power. That's an area where I work in every day, and establishing those relationships and cultivating those relationships across commerce, trade, development, international relations, and knowing who's who where is certainly going to open up some doors. And you would not know which alums are in those government circles, but once they do find out, they've already started negotiating right there. Thanks.
Gretchen, it's funny you say that, because we've seen a lot of upheaval in geopolitical situations in the last many months, especially related to global universities. And alums played a major role in conversations with the government or government stakeholders and so on and so forth,
Exactly.
even
Exactly.
positioning, right? So that's something that even Indian institutions have to be so conscious of. Paresh, some introductory remarks from you.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Ashwin and Dr. Grishan, because they put in a very interesting perspective of what alumni, like what can institution expect from alumni. So I come from a different background. In a sense, I work with most of like the 1,200 institutions that we say, right? There are very few of them which are top brands. Like most of the other institutions are the smaller institutions across India, and probably I will try to put a perspective from that angle. Uh, One thing is that every institution knows an importance of alumni. That's been my experience. It's not that they don't know what's alumni and how can they contribute. The challenge is that they don't know what to do with them. And most of the times they start initiating some activities, mostly the reunions. That's the thing. And reunions are very episodic, right? You don't give alums a reason to come back, right? The most important part we have been speaking about is that we are all asking about what can alums give back. How can you raise funds? How can you placements? How can you get anything from alumni as a brand or anything? The question I usually put back to institutions is that how are you as an institution actually supporting alumni? And that's a very important part because most of the institutions, India especially, haven't built the relationship over a period of time. So I have a framework that I usually call in my training program called BHI. It's like build, engage, help, and ask. Are you helping alumni before asking them anything? And there are many different things that institutions can actually help alumni with. Alumni seek a lot of things and they can actually help. So with that angle, I think there are a lot of things that institutions even need to put a lot of effort in India, especially before even they look out for asking or a building relationship where the funds can be brought back or even recruitment or anything for students to come back. So that's a thing that I would want to put in, like say, what are the things that institutions would like to put in even before thinking about asking something? Yeah, with that, I would probably want to open the floor.
Thanks, Paresh. Thanks. Actually, that's a very interesting aspect, right? What are you giving before you are asking?
Give and
And that's how relationships are built across, business associations or even personal relationships, right? What are you giving into the relationship before asking? So that's a very interesting aspect. Ashwin, just sort of circling back to you, what were I know that IIT Madras has been doing this for a while, but where does alumni relations sort of sit in the governance, or is there anything that you did structurally for it to become front and center for a school like IIT Madras?
Yeah, Nidhi, I mean, that's a very good question. About 20 years ago, or even prior to that, we had something called a faculty in charge of alumni affairs or something like that. That meant there was someone with no accountability, I mean, just asked to volunteer a little bit of their time to doing things relating to alumni affairs. And so typically this faculty would teach and do research and things like this. And maybe a few hours in the week would actually spend some time at the alumni office. And mostly what came out of that is at the end of the year, we would help out with the alumni reunions, which the alumni and the alumni association would organize. But of course, there would be a small part where they come to campus and do certain things, and we would interface with them. And where required in a very reactionary basis, we would sort of interface. So that's how it started. Then over a period of time, I think we understood exactly what the other panelists have also talked about, the importance of alumni relations and so on. And about a decade ago, a little bit more of a decade ago, we elevated this role to the position of a deanship. So at IIT Madras, you have the director who is the equivalent of the president of the university or whatever. And there are a council of 7 or 8 deans, working with the director who take care of all aspects of the institute. Could be courses, research, student life, etc. So now alumni, and actually it's alumni and corporate relations, is a deanship, which means it is now front and center of IIT's thinking. So every week when we review what's happening at IIT Madras, one of the things we review is what's happening with regards to alumni and corporate relationships. And now as a dean, I find that I spend more than 50% of my time as doing alumni and corporate relations related activities. In fact, that's an understatement. I think in many cases it's almost 80-90% of my week. And then about 10-20% of my time also teaching, because I'm still a full-time faculty at IIT Madras. So I think that's the transition that we've undertaken between a state where we had about 10% of someone's time that they were spending on this to about 90%. And now we have an organization that gets reviewed directly by the director and therefore by the board of governors and things like that. So I think it's very important that this becomes something that fits within the existing administrative structure, as opposed to being a satellite function that, out of sight is out of mind in many, many ways, right? So you want to avoid that happening.
And it's really heartening to see that you made alumni relations almost front and center, rather core to the institutions running, right? Along with academics or research or any of those sort of verticals. And did you also structurally bring in alumni into the governance, or did you do anything which made them feel part of the institute? Was that one of your strategies?
Sure, and we did that at two levels. One is when we set up the alumni office at IIT Madras, also purely for tactical fundraising purposes. We set up a trust, and we called it the Alumni Charitable Trust, because the intention was that if an alumni wanted to give a philanthropic donation, particularly an alumni, excuse me, from the United States, then setting up a trust would be a structure that would allow them to donate as well as get tax benefits. Today, that trust is no longer required for that purpose, because the IIT Madras is able to collect charitable donations from abroad and things like that. But the point is, we created this trust and we created a governance layer on that trust, which was completely staffed by alumni. And the commitment was, come and help us govern this. So let's meet at the very minimum once a quarter. Let's look at processes, procedures, strategies, things like that overall. Right? And I think that's very, very important that you have a board. We can debate on what's a good number of people to have, but that gives people ownership about the entirety of the process.
Mm-hmm.
In parallel, we also look at ways in which we can bring alumni in other sort of into other parts of IIT Madras. So to give you an example, every 5 years, every department at IIT Madras undergoes a peer review, which means you take, I'm from civil engineering, and you say, how is this civil engineering department doing vis-a-vis civil engineering departments in India and elsewhere in the world? And typically we constitute a committee of academics and practitioners who sort of look at this and weigh in on. So in this particular cycle, we tried to see if every one of those departmental committees had at least one or more alumni who are either practitioners in civil, mechanical, electrical, whatever, or academics, say, in a top university in the United States or wherever, who could sit and actually spend time. So we invited them to come to IIT Madras, look at the department, visit the labs, talk to the students, come up with your ideas, write a report, and that report is now a formal report that will be sent to the chairman of the board of governors and things like this. So there are many other ways. This is just one example of meaningfully involving alumni, giving them some work to do, and through that helping them develop some ownership on IIT Madras's growth. Right. So there's both. There's this governance layer, and there's also the more technical involvement layer.
And I'm sure this must have also helped, like you being an alum yourself, right? And leading alumni relations. I'm sure it's a huge advantage. Sometimes a disadvantage, I remember those days, but a huge advantage too, right?
Yeah, and in fact, the way the deanship was structured, there we have 7 or 8 deanships, like it's a dean of students, dean of faculty, dean of this. Any other deanship can be occupied by any faculty, depending on how well qualified they are and their administrative, capabilities and so on. This deanship alone can only be occupied by an alumni faculty. And then within that alumni faculty pool, we sort of look at who might be able to run the ship. But I think we're also very clear that it's important to be an alumnus, because that's how you develop the connection. So very often when I meet another alumnus, I mean, in the beginning, it's not an IIT Madras alumni conversation. It's an alumni conversation, right? So I'm class of 98, Godavari hostel, what were you, what did you do, things like that. And then over a period of time, once you build, so partly it's building, it's building a relationship with the institute. It's also building a relationship with our office. And we want the alumni to feel just comfortable reaching out to us and saying, this is a person just like me, ate in the same mess that I did, stayed in the same kinds of rooms that I did, and develop that level of comfort. So I think it is very important that you're able to talk that talk. Although I would say that, I've seen other universities in other parts of the world, and I think non-alumni, provided they sort of are oriented right, can also do this. But all things equal, there's a bit of a delta advantage.
There's a bit of an advantage over there. Yeah. And, I just want to bring in one small point, and you addressed this in your opening remarks. The Alumni Relations Office of the institution is a very different entity from an alumni association, right? The motivations are different, the goals are different, and hence it's not one or the either other. It's both, right? You have to have both for institutions to flourish, and have synergies between both. I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm sure you agree with that,
No, no,
Ashwin.
absolutely. And we have our Office of Alumni and Corporate Relations. We also have the IIT Madras Alumni Association.
Mm-hmm.
And they are actually two separate bodies, but they work hand in glove. The
Hand in glove.
president of the Alumni Association is ex officio on our alumni trust,
Mm-hmm.
and I, as the dean, am in
In
the
the
whatever
alumni
executive committee of the Alumni Association, and so
association.
we work very closely together. But there is also a delineation of roles and responsibilities.
Mm.
So alumni helping alumni is something that the Alumni Association does.
Association.
Alumni helping the institute, or the institute helping the alumni, is something that we do. And what's interesting is, for the outside world, they don't see this difference, right? I mean, a lot of people don't understand that there's an alumni association and an institute.
Yeah.
They just think there's an alumni body that they can reach out to. So
Yeah.
while it is important to have both of these, it's also important for both of them to work hand in glove, so that
Yeah.
you send a unified signal to your alumni. And in many cases, there'll be a query that should be answered by the alumni association that comes to me, and I route it there, or the other way around. And because we
Mhm.
sort of work very harmoniously together, that's not an issue.
Very, so this is something that I don't think many Indian institutions understand, because people think, oh, I have an alumni association. Why do I need an alumni relations office at all? Right? So this is developing this into a strategic advantage. That's why you need an alumni relations office. But it's just sort of moving on to you. You speak about so many institutions which are not maybe as sophisticated or exposed to global alumni engagement and so on. What are the first few requirements that you see institutes having when they're looking at alumni relations?
Right.
And let's say across your top 5-10% of your campuses, which are the top three sort of engagement mechanisms that institutions are using?
Right. So most of the institutions that we work with, yeah, there are many of them which, because we've been working almost 10 years with them, many of them evolved into having their own association and bodies and as a cycle. But when they started, if I see even around at least 50 to 60% of institutions don't even have a full-time alumni office.
Mm.
It's a professor given an additional in charge, asking to maintain an alumni relations. That's a major challenge that you see across. And that's primarily because somewhere institutions don't see still alumni as a strategy. That's precisely the topic that you mentioned, right? They don't see that as a long-term investment that they would want to for the transformation of the institution. Now, that's how institutions are. But if we look at engagement, I think they have evolved a lot. And many of the institutions, like say, I'll not take names, a lot of them, because
Yes, of course. Yeah.
a few of the institutions have raised a lot of money, and these are tier two institutions, not even tier one institutions, raised a lot of money. Primarily, the engagement happens in India is the employability problem. That's what they look at in engaging. So it's the mentorship, it's the student development, and placements is what most of the institutions look at rather than fundraising. Fundraising is only for a few government and aided institutions. Otherwise, private universities and all find it very difficult to raise funds because they haven't invested a lot in. So I keep on joking with my thing is like, you're reaching out to your alums after they became rich and famous, just like a
Mhm.
school's classmate. You reach out to them once they become famous, right? So that's what they've been trying to do. But otherwise, if you first go and ask alums of anything, that's their time. And
Mhm.
that's they would probably want to really go back and give the advice and time to the students, mainly the students, not even others. But like student development is something that everyone would want. So we have seen some very interesting practical use cases. One would be we run something called a interview preparation through alumni,
Mhm.
where alums come help in resume reviews for the current student. And we have done that for a tier two college
Mhm.
in a very remote village, remote town, and they have done really successfully. So we have seen students who had score of 50 to 60 went on to score of 80 to 90 just within a couple of iterations of resume reviews. That was something remarkable for us because we saw real outcomes that are coming through alumni.
Mhm.
Right. The other one that we've been working on is something called a student project guides. One of the things that happens in Indian institutions is that a lot of students do projects, but none of those projects are industry ready. So we thought, why don't we involve alumni to give real guidance to the project that they do? Because all they need is that guidance on which project you should pick up and how do you do. Otherwise, they just go and buy the projects from the industry. That's what happens in most of the institutions. So these were some really good, interesting use cases. We have seen results coming up, outcomes. I would say like outcome-driven mentoring programs. What we've been doing. Otherwise, most of the institutions still go with they think mentoring is about guest lectures, and they do guest lectures across. That's been now across happening. We don't call that mentoring really, because that's more of an inspiration. You just do a talk and go away. But that's happening a lot. Many of the institutions have been picking up guest lectures and inviting alumni for webinars, and all sorts is happening today.
So the biggest interest that you see from institutions really is for student-oriented programs.
Yes, exactly.
That's what you are seeing, and not yet for students who want to maybe get involved in research or
No.
academia, not so much.
Not yet, not yet.
Not
So
yet.
the primary thing that would be for major of Indian institutions is placements. That's what they care about, and that's directly linked to their admissions, and that's what they've been looking out for alumni's help in.
Very interesting that that's the first step people are taking. Gretchen, just sort of moving on to you, as Indian institutions are looking towards global alumni, and even mid-tier and other independent institutions now have alumni who are living and working across the globe, right? If they want to reach out to their international alumni, what's the readiness check you would recommend they look at before they even try to reach these alums internationally? And are there any red flags that you would like sort of warn them against?
Really good question. And I think, well, first of all, we just because an alum may be living in London or in Toronto, it doesn't mean that they are not, or that they don't have an opportunity to be involved. We're talking about the ways that we deliver education is not just in person, it's online, it's hybrid. So to be a professor of the practice, right? Paresh, you talked about alums coming in to be a guest professor or guest at a class, is to, first of all, find out, what is the need? And then is it the institution or the organization's mission? Is it part of an upgraded mission and vision? And when they say they're global, or they say they're internationally connected, or they want to be citizens or connected to citizenship around the world, what does that actually mean? Can they describe that? And what steps have they taken? So I think part of the barometer is to say, how international are we? Like, are we going to say that we want to expand our reach? Do we have study abroad programs? Do some of our academic departments go to a different location for a placement? Do we have the kind of employability opportunities abroad? How often do our faculty research in other areas? What is our institution known for? Is it a business school? Is it an engineering school? And what other consortia or partnerships do we have with the rest of the world? And if it is, like an IIT or an ISB, or even a school of liberal arts or a school of art and crafts, where's their extension with their reach? My guess is that it's going to be outside the country. There's going to be some reaches. So in order to continue to enhance what the institution's known for, stay focused. So here's the tip. Don't be broad, because you'll lose your message. You might lose diffused energy and efforts. Focus on a few focused wins. What is it that you want? Do you want to have a reunion and have a virtual, or have a reunion in another location of the world? Do you want to have a global reach type of event where you are raising awareness for that anniversary of the school or a new institutional leader? And do we want to have them travel to meet alums that if you have to think about where your alums are, where are the top 3 locations outside your home country? And focus there, but do it by way of doing it. It's all of these efforts are going to be, the sum of the parts. It's going to make up a whole. It's going to make up a campaign. It's going to make up a story. So I think you really need to say how ready you are to go abroad. And I've done this with a little bit of a barometer. We've talked about, are we recruiting abroad? Are we academically engaged abroad? And then do we have an alumni abroad? And that is kind of a story for advancement. That's a story you can actually talk about. If we're going to be raising funds or raising awareness, it's going to enhance our recruitment. It's going to enhance our reputation academically, and it's going to give alums more of that global community.
And Gretchen, just sort of to take this conversation forward, there are multiple ways of doing that, right? You don't really, international alums can be reached and served through various means that people have perhaps not thought of. For example, you engage with the Indian embassies in various countries, for example, right? And that in turn serves your alumni in, say, Finland or in Dubai or whoever. There are trade association chapters and so on and so forth that you could engage with as an institution to serve your alumni abroad. But how do you encourage people to start thinking about these non-traditional ways of engagement? And how do you sort of showcase that value?
Well, I would say one of the things that there's several kind of requisite resources that you need to have a globally engaged community. And you're going to need to have the champion and the leadership team, someone at the top. We have a dean here of alumni relations and corporate relations who's a champion for this. But we need the institutional leadership as a whole to want to resource this area. So we don't want to have one-offs. We don't want to have something happen and then not see it happen again for 5 years. So we're going to need to build this into the strategic plan. And then so to do that, and then we're going to need to probably raise some awareness already. So get some messages out there, working with the communications and the public relations department, the media. And it might just be showcasing, the first year, it might be just raising the awareness by showcasing some stories. The global reach of our alums, of our students. Did you know some facts about the institution, or it's, the people, even families, right? Families have been a huge resource to the work I've had over the years. So I think there is a great story, again, focusing on what is the message, and why are we, what is the, what is our invitation to all alums, whether they be home-based, regional-based, or globally based, and what is the invitation to them to get involved? And I think when you talk about, Paresh, you were talking about, just the recruitment cycle, right? And just building the pipeline. So, is it building a pipeline for the next 5 years? And is it, a couple of other ways for them to get involved? But again, it's being able to say, we know that, or we know that you were an active student on campus. Let's get back involved. And that's that's a little bit of the database projects too, to find out, what students were involved in and how they were. But it's I think it's starting in a very kind of specific message, but making sure that message is clear, and that leadership is on message, communications is on message, and that students start to hear those messages again. Getting back to what Paresh said, you were talking about, and Nita, you mentioned this, that you thought it was interesting that really the alum efforts were really to focus on the student experience. I think that's amazing. That's really where we should start. Happy, satisfied students means happy, satisfied alumni. So, I mean,
that's true. One of my takeaways would be, treat your students as alumni in waiting. And Ashwin sort of, alluded to that too, that it begins on campus.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It does. And it begins on campus, and it begins and families and other supporters of the students will see that too.
Ashwin, just quick, did you have a point to make, Parish?
Yeah, I just want to add one point because when you mentioned global alumni and what are the engagement with this, in my program, I run something called 13 different engagement programs. And one of the programs is called Emergency Helpline. And very important for global alumni because what happens is that you're as alumni are spread across the thing. One of the things that they need when they go to a new city is a helpline. Right. They may need help in terms of relocation, whatever that is. And it's not about providing them the service or something, just in terms of guidance, right? And in case of there's an emergency, whom do you reach out to? So institutions that have chapters or champions across the cities can have those champions as listed emergency helpline numbers within the platform. And that becomes what's happened because, and if you just list them down in the mobile app or the application that you use, technology today allows that you to do that easily. What happens is that you're taking and advertise this as a program saying that, hey, we have emergency helpline across different cities, so many cities that we have. What happens is that you're taking alumni engagement beyond nostalgia, and because we don't know when an emergency can strike and who needs the help. And that's make people come back.
And that's part of that reputational management in good times and bad, whether it be a natural disaster or whether it be a crisis a crisis in reputation because something happened and someone did something that doesn't look very good to the institution. How do we rebound from that and be able to say that, this doesn't have to reflect on us as an institution because, we are, our principles are long-standing. Yeah. So I think
and just talking about those bad times and a little bit of failures, I'm going to ask this question to Ashwin because he runs a very, very successful alumni relations office. So Ashwin, why don't you share a failure of yours, something that didn't work, a policy that you put in, or an initiative that you started, or something that didn't convert the way that you wanted. And once you talk about that, on a general basis, what did you stop or start or reorganize because of that failure?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I think there are several of those examples. Secondly, I don't think we are a extremely successful organization yet. I think if you look outside, I was at an event in Silicon Valley at some point where somebody was bemoaning the fact that Harvard, through its alumni, had a $50 billion endowment. Yes. And Carnegie Mellon, in comparison, was so poor that they had only a $5 billion endowment. Now, they were a relative failure. And I wanted to lift up my hand and say, boss, we are hardly 50 million, let alone 5 billion, let alone 50 million. So, let us be very humble here. We have a long way to go, in India. And therefore, it's like in the 100-meter race, I might be at meter number 8, you might be at meter number 7. So I appear ahead. But, we have a long race to run. So, but there are, several areas. I'll give you one. I think, in the past, we were guilty of looking at this purely as a fundraising organization. And, whenever you sort of meet with alumni, you sort of ask them for funding, right, for whatever. And generally, most alumni are doing really well. They will not sort of say no. But the quantum of funding you will get will be relatively low because essentially there's been no engagement that was built with the alumni and things like that. So we realize that, okay, if you want to, raise a few crores a year, okay, fine, you've got enough alumni. They all give you a few lakhs or a few thousands, you'll get there. But how do you really get to the 5 billion, 500 billion, 50 billion kind of numbers that we're talking about. And there, I think we sort of realize that it's important when you meet with alumni, and goes back to the point that you don't necessarily always ask. Sometimes our meetings, particularly with very wealthy alumni, and alumni can contribute, are really more, let's tell you about what's happening, let's have a conversation and things like this. The second thing we realized is you also need to market IIT Madras or whatever, university, because people are sort of, I mean, one way is to say, yes, I got something out of it. Here's a little bit of give back. But really, what people want to do is contribute to a journey, to an aspirational journey. So it is important for us at IIT Madras to be able to communicate to our alumni in terms of what we are trying to do, why they should get involved over and beyond, the normal call of duty and things like this, which meant that in our organization, we were hitherto a sales focused organization, if I might use that term. We needed to add a healthy component of marketing into it, right? And also relationship building, which goes without saying. But I think these are all course corrections that we've made over the years. And I mean, this has been very recent over the last year. We're saying we really need to be able to tell stories about what we are doing in far more effective manner, in a way in which alumni will understand and appreciate, and which will bring them together. So can we, for instance, look at the research that we are doing and try to sort of tell stories around where we want to go? Can we look at student aspirations and all these competitions that they're entering, or the startups that are coming out? And none of this was there a few years ago, because of which our performance, relatively, again, it's hindsight is always 2020. We had many sort of dead ends when we'd go talk to people. We'd expect, oh, this person's going to get involved. Their company is going to come and recruit from us. They're going to spend time. They're going to give us money, and none of that would pan out. Right. So I think these are, I mean, I can go on and on, but I know we have limited time. But there are several examples of failure that we have slowly. I think the most important thing is to understand you're not the cat's whiskers yet. And everything you do, you've got to be reflective. And at the end of the year, we look back to say what went right, what went wrong. And we do a planning exercise every April, saying what were things that we didn't do last year that we should do this year, and things like that. I think that's very important to do.
Very focused, very analytical about what worked, what didn't work. Do you also chop off initiatives that didn't work quite clinically?
Absolutely. I'll tell you one initiative that didn't work is that we had this group of people that we call departmental liaison officers, because we said we want these guys to sit in from our office, to sit in our various departments, and use their good offices and speak to the professors and so on, and build a database of alumni from each department, and do departmental activities that would bring alumni in. Right? So we actually invested in hiring a bunch of people, 4 or 5 people, etc. And then we found out that our departments were just not ready for it. Many of our departments wouldn't even give space for these guys to sit. Even if they got space, they wouldn't sort of give them data. No events were being conducted. I mean, and so it was essentially a waste of money, right? We hired all of these people so of course we found other things for them to do, but that was an initiative that sort of we tried it for a couple of years, I think, and just at some point pull the plug. So there are many of these kinds of things where we try, and I think that's also important. I don't think the US in some sense has figured out how to do it for the American mentality and culture. I think India is a little bit different, and I don't think we figured it out yet, which means you've got to be ready to experiment and iterate, right? Try a bunch of things. Obviously, some things are not going to work, and just learn from it and move on. But the idea should not be not to try, is my opinion. They're all early enough in the game. It's all like learning to walk. You've got to fall 10 times, or if you learn to ride a bike, if you've not fallen off a bike, you don't know how to ride it. So
see, that's very you brought up a very interesting point. Alumni relations for the American way has maybe been figured out, but other places may be different. And Gretchen, you may want to shed some light on that. What are these strategies that travel well globally? One or two things that travel well globally, but what are these things which are hyper local? Which you have to, and you're very familiar with China, and you're very familiar with Australia, you're so familiar with other places, that works only in that particular context, perhaps.
Okay, well, when it comes to the American model, it's about sports, and it's about clubs and activities, and the affinity-based alumni groups that find each other, whether it be fraternities or, it's a residential-based experience for some. It's very expensive, and people invest. I mean, they spend on typical 4 years of an undergraduate, and those kind of rites of passage that happens through those organizations where people feel the kinship and they feel that affinity. And so that's going to be with them for a long time, if ever, forever. And I come from a family where, my mother just celebrated like the 64th, reunion from San Jose State University. It goes on forever. So those connections and relationships that are found because they happen outside the classroom as well, right? It's those meaningful experiences.
And
So
that may
that's
not
one model.
travel. Yeah, but
No,
that may not
that's
travel well with other people.
that's one experience. The other experiences would be, I think it's just, it's probably the connections where alums have said to themselves, if I were a student today, what would I need? And that advice, that helpline, that ability to have that internship, even the ability to just prepare for interviews and to be that, I think a core, like a guide by the side in some way. So what is it? And how can we be specifically doing that? And because of their own lived experience, they may have another 10 to 20 years of experience. How can they share that back? In Australia, Australians are travelers because we have to travel at least 9 hours to get anywhere. So it's going to be probably looking at opportunities to extend their education abroad through other partnerships and that kind of knowledge exchange and lifelong learning. And it doesn't have to. It could be a short course. It could be a week. It could be a certificate program. If your institution is looking at other ways of credentialing or continuing education, again, how can they market that to the alumni and where do they go? And again, the executive business education, the executive models are very popular. But maybe your institution should just think about the partnerships that they have already academically. Could those academic departments become academic partnerships become alum partnerships, just to connect two institutions and their alumni together? So it's like, bolting on, but it's that extending that relationship outside the classroom.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So you basically connect with other alumni of other institutions also.
Why not?
Yep, sure.
Right. And a lot of alums would say, oh, I don't want to go to that event anymore because I've already met everyone. Well,
in fact, the IITs again have done this quite well. There's a Pan IIT group that
there is
across all IITs, and they have sort of done that quite well. I'm sorry, we are really running out of time, and we've not even scratched the surface. I feel so overwhelmed because there are so many things I want to ask you all. We do have lots of audience questions. One of the questions is, how do you engage with alums who have graduated really long back and now identify with other institutions and no longer feel a strong connection to yours? And you could be a K-12 school or you could be an undergrad school, but that guy has gone to a Harvard or that guy has gone to an IIM Ahmedabad. So how do you sort of engage with them specifically, who no longer feel that same kind of affinity? Ashwin.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, because that's a problem, that's a challenge that we face. We've got alumni who graduated in the 60s, 70s, went to the US, did a master's somewhere, maybe even a PhD, are very well engaged with universities there, are also engaged with universities that their children went to there. But IIT Madras, for instance, perhaps never reached out, or they have never had the opportunity to come back. And so we are a bit of a foreign entity. So the exact same situation we've sort of faced. I think essentially there are two ways. One is, I think the best way to do it is to go there and meet them. All right. And my experience has been, if you go around and say, I'm going to be in your neighborhood, and you give them enough advance notice and you say, next month in the middle of December, I'm going to be in your neighborhood. Is there an opportunity to meet? I find it very hard that people will say, no, I'm not interested in meeting. I mean, they'd just be curious, they'd be happy, right? And in case they say, no, I'm traveling next weekend, or what are you doing the time you're here, or whatever, it's a perfect opportunity to say, okay, I know, sorry, we're not able to meet, but can we get on a call? And over that, and that allows you to sort of establish that first level contact. Then, of course, it's up to, the people involved to be able to engage them, draw them in, and things like that. But I don't think there is any substitute to actually going and meeting people. I
So
spend
re-establishing those relationships is what you're
absolutely.
saying.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I
I
spend now 80% of my time on the road. I'm in Delhi right now as we speak, right? I mean,
Mhm.
so this is, I think, if you're not going to travel, if you're not going to meet, this is not the right way to run the company.
And if you could, even better, but if you could have an alum or a parent or someone connected to your institution in that location, let's call it Silicon Valley or Washington, D.C. or London, um, that or Toronto or wherever, that would basically say, I will co-host something with you. I'll throw a lunch together, and it's a peer-to-peer exchange. And then all of a sudden it says, oh, I know that person. Oh, they're fairly well known. Oh, I'm going to go because I'm interested in knowing why they're involved. And it becomes a little bit of an aspirational type of ask, or aspirational for them to go because they're curious, and it's a peer-to-peer exchange. And then at the event, then it goes from there. But someone tells their story about why they're involved, and someone says, oh, I can do that too, especially if it's a peer ask.
Mhm. Oh, so you think peer asks have a little bit more weight than the
If it's
institution asks?
if it's a peer, if it's a established and a fairly if the peer that's asking has benefited
Credibility
through
and
through the credibility,
Mhm.
well known, known in their field, or and someone was a bit surprised that, oh, actually they're connected to my institution as well. That's interesting. So
Mhm.
it depends. That peer ask could be a member of an alumni association, or it could be an advisor, or but again, that's where you have, this is another one of those tips. When you're starting to build that core, that inner circle, you need to have some founding members, some alums who will want to be founding members of these affinity groups, professional groups, chapters. And when they say, well, what do I do as a founding member? To say, we will come to you and seek your advice. We'll seek your advice about how to organize, when to organize, and who to organize. And
That, that's a
that's
great takeaway. That's a great takeaway, Gretchen. Parish, one question which has come to you. There are Gen Z alums who don't relate to the way the institution reaches out these days. Do you
Right.
have recommendations?
Yeah. So I think Dr. Ashwin actually pointed out that very early on. Most of the institutions think about alums after they exit, right? They don't make a part of their current campus engagement activities, and that's just a direct way to engage the Gen Z, because many times they don't even know what alumni association is.
Mhm.
They know the value of alums and etc., but they don't have to connect. So the best thing would be to involve alums in campus events. Like say there could be a campus event that's happening, and most of the times, like always, there are hostels, there are groups, there are these houses across, right? So and alums across also connect to those houses. And usually, like say, if you see in US, there's always a mascot or anything for representing an alum. In India, that culture doesn't exist, right? So getting connecting to Gen Z would be, I would put in a simple way is that what is the value you are giving to the student when he's in campus through LM?
Mhm.
So if you are providing him a value in terms of career guidance or networking or any of the so maybe someone wants to go to US, are you connecting him to a right alum who is studied there
Mhm.
and providing the career journey, or someone wants to get into Google,
Mhm.
are you able to tell them how the life at Google looks like coming from that alum? Right. Those are the things that you have, the interventions you need to have it well in the campus to connect with Gen Z before they even graduate.
That's really interesting. So we are really at the end, the last minute. I'd like to request, there are lots of questions, but we'll have to do a edition number two. I think it's this topic is so vast that it deserves one. But few takeaways, few takeaways from all three of you. Two things that we should remember when we embark on this alumni relations journey. We'll start with you, Ashwin.
Oh, just well, where where do I start? I think I'll go back to saying it's really about engagement. And one of the things we constantly do is keep thinking about what are new and different and better ways to engage with our alumni. What kinds of events can we organize? How often should we sort of travel and meet? Or as Gretchen was saying, get people to host. I think engagement is the name of the game. Once you engage people, everything else will follow. Alumni, in my view, I'm also an alumnus of several institutions. I studied at a school, I went to IIT, I'm also an alumnus of Stanford, things like this. If somebody asks me for something, I would never say no to any of these institutions. And I think that's true of most people. But you need to be engaged. You need to sort of be on people's radar. So to me, if there's one thing that people want to take away from all of this is engage.
Okay. Paresh?
I think I connected the first point that I mentioned, right? Every institution already knows that, and the most common problem that we see is that institutions are dormant with alumni. And one word I would want to take back would be activation. How do you activate your alumni rather than just getting them into events or any kind of I would not to demean what Sir said, like Dr. Ashwin said, but it's not just engagement, it's activation there, and that's so critical. And the most important point, if any institution wants to help alumni, would be, can you become a lifelong career support to your alumni? Can you provide the lifelong career support to alumni? If we just focus on these two things and don't focus on building a like database of 10,000 alums, what you need is 100 champions. If you just focus on that, I think things will start changing around. Thank you.
Gretchen, some closing remarks from you?
Well, it can't be about alumni without alumni. And so I think that it would also be really important to know that you are seeking the advice and the assistance of students who are about to graduate, as well as your most recent grads, and to give them a job on campus or to hire maybe one or two alums that are going to just be graduating to give them a professional experience within the institution, but to give them the job about marketing to Gen Z, to have students intern in your office, to, when people say, well, we don't have the resources, but there are resources, and there's your own, products that are either, I would say products, but, the alums in training or the recent alums. So don't underestimate the great ideas, the entrepreneurial thinking, and the ability to be savvy and to help you, I think, fast track some of these messages in ways where they would say, all of a sudden, I could be an influencer for my institution. And what does that mean? So invest in some of that, inborn opportunities. And, if that's a project, then start today on that, because that may, in a few years, bear a lot of opportunities for alumni engagement.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you, Paresh, for being here. Really appreciate your time and your insights. As we said, an hour was too little for such an intense topic. So we are going to have a part 2 someday soon. And look forward to being connected with you with a lot of questions that the audience are asking. I'm going to send that across to you all in an email, and perhaps we can respond to them individually. But thank you, and thank you, audience, for being here with us and being a part of Jetri Dialogs episode 2. This is Nidhi Reddy. We are signing off now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste all.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Nidhi.
much.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Take good care. Bye-bye.